Entrepreneurship has become an increasingly popular career choice in recent years, with many individuals starting their own businesses and pursuing their passions. However, entrepreneurship can be a challenging and risky endeavor, requiring skills such as creativity, adaptability, and strategic thinking. A thesis is a claim that you can argue for or against. It should be something that you can present persuasively and clearly in the scope of your paper, so keep in mind the page count. If possible, your thesis should be somewhat original. But on May 3, a couple of weeks later, Lincoln issued an executive order calling for 43,000 three-year volunteers for the Army, and also increasing the size of the regular Army and Navy by 40,000 men. Both of these actions were in apparent violation of the Constitution. Australians speak English, of course. But for many tourists and even some locals, Australian English has only tenuous links with mother tongue. Our speech is prepared with words and phrases whose arcane meanings are understood only by the initiate. It is these colourful colloquialisms that Australian slang set to truly explain. Exhilarating, exhausting, and intense. There are just some of the words used to describe doing an MBA. Everyone's experience of doing MBA is, of course, different through denying that it's hard and a demanding work whichever course you do. MBA is one of the fastest growing areas of studying in the UK, so that must be a sustainable benefit against form in one pain. The Japanese tea ceremony is a ritual tour influenced by Buddhism in which green tea is prepared and served to a small group of guests in a peaceful setting. The ceremony can take as long as 4 hours. And there are many traditional gestures that both the server and the guest must perform. Traditional divisions of domestic work are understood to persist because of the strong association of the home with femininity and paid work with masculinity. To challenge who does what in the home is arguably tantamount to challenging what it is to be a woman or a man. The elephant is the largest living land mammal. During evolution, its skeleton has greatly altered from the usual mammal, designed for 2 main reasons. One is to cope with the great weight of huge, grinding cheek teeth and elongated tusk, making the skull particularly massive. The other is to support the enormous bulk of such a huge body. Blue is the most popular color. Food researchers disagree. When humans searched for food, they learned to avoid toxic or spoiled objects, which were often blue, black, or purple. When food dyed blue is served to study subjects, they lose appetite. This is what needs to happen on climate change. The world needs to put a price on carbon emissions and let the market respond. If politicians pretend this can be done without pain, it will probably result in another 5 to 10 years of pretending to take action. While blue is one of the most popular colors, it is one of the least appetizing. Blue food is rare in nature. Food researchers say that when humans searched for food, they learned to avoid toxic or spoiled objects, which were often blue, black, or purple. When food dyed blue is served to study subjects, they lose appetite. The brain is divided into two hemispheres, called the left and right hemispheres. Each hemisphere provides a different set of functions, behaviors, and controls. The right hemisphere is often called the creative side of the brain, while the left hemisphere is the logical or analytic side of the brain. Yellow is considered as the most optimistic color. Yet surprisingly, people lose their tempers more often in yellow rooms and babies cry more in them. The reason may be that yellow is the hardest color for eyes to take in. So it can be overpowering if overused. Lincoln's apparently radical change of mind about his war power to emancipate slaves was caused by escalating scope of war, which convinced him that any measure to weaken the Confederacy and strengthen the Union war effort was justifiable as a military necessity. The survey found that the statistical chances of someone from a poor background being accepted at one of the country's most respected universities are far lower than those of a student from a wealthy family. This means that the inequalities in society are likely to be passed down from one generation to the next. There is every reason to believe that effective regulations are not merely a luxury that only the rich can afford, but an important foundation for a thriving private sector and economic growth. But the broad pattern of the past 5 years has been that the main reform efforts are taking place in rich countries. The advantage of the great European and American orchestras is that they were able to establish their iconic status in an age when their identity could become entrenched, there was less competition and it was easier to create a brand. Not only did they have the best halls, they attracted the best musicians, who tended to stay put. Quite obviously, a significant rise in the number of people in a given area or country will affect the demand for a whole host of goods and services. Note that a change in the structure of the population will increase the demand for some goods but reduce the demand for others. The life of a hunter-gatherer is indeed, as Thomas Hobbes said of the state of nature, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. In some respects, to be sure, wandering through the jungle bagging monkeys may be preferable to the hard slog of subsistence agriculture. The Assembly also decided that, at that special session, it would adopt a concise and action-oriented political declaration, agreed upon in advance by consensus through intergovernmental negotiations under the auspices of the conference.